Welcome everyone to today's LinkedIn Live. We're joined today by the wonderful Jo Glover. So this is hosted by the One Group, a recruitment company, and I'm Keri Rossiter-Turner. So I specialise in placing marketing professionals across Northamptonshire and the surrounding areas. And my colleague here, Sarah, can introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I focus on marketing recruitment in the Cambridgeshire area and surrounding areas too. Me and Jo have known each other for a little while now, so it's been really lovely watching the marketing meetup grow and like seeing what it's become today. And I'm really looking forward to chatting today with you.
Yes. So although Sarah and I have both introduced ourselves as recruiters in marketing, that we specialise in placing marketing professionals, I think what that really means is we're really interested in marketeers, what they do. I think, like you, Jo, we could probably talk about marketing with people all day, every day, but we wanted today to focus on a bit of a different topic around quiet confidence. So, Jo, I know you've been described before as a nervous networker. Would you say that's a fair way to describe yourself?
Yeah, it's terrifying, isn't it?
You found a solution to that. So you launched the marketing meetup. Was it 2016 that you?
Look at that for knowledge. Yeah.
Have an anniversary party soon, I think.
Yeah.
I believe, was it in a canteen in Cambridge?
That's right. Yeah. So the Redgate Software Canteen, way back when. Yeah, it seems like a long time ago now.
Gosh, yeah. And it's grown phenomenally. So we love the marketing meetup. So I think the whole concept of it is that you were a nervous networker and you thought walking into a room full of people was really intimidating, the idea of them selling things to you and maybe not feeling valued in that space, and you wanted to create an event for maybe people who have quiet confidence that can walk into a space and meet other people within a world of marketing and be the best that they can be despite that concept of quiet confidence. But I wanted to ask you directly, because that was my research, my understanding of Jo Glover and why I respect you and bow down to you. I'm impressed with everything that you've done. But from your perspective, if the topic of today is quiet confidence, how would you describe that?
So I think it's easy when we think about confidence that a lot of folks will tie it into this concept of being loud or extroverted or walking into a space and feeling like you own it. Like you have to be the funniest, the most compelling, the most charismatic person in the space. And sometimes that is an expression of confidence, but I think there's another version of confidence, which is a different definition, which I think more closely serves how I feel about confidence, which is confidence is the ability to show up as yourself. Now, that is something which I think a lot of us struggle with over the course of our lives. First of all, even knowing who you are, how you feel, the things that you stand for, the things that matter to you. But once you get to that point, to then be accepting of who you are and what you think and what you stand for, and sort of say, I'm going to feel comfortable to show up as that person. I think a lot of us, it's not even overthinking, just thinking about showing up as that version of ourselves is a scary thought. And sometimes it's not even a thought which really suits the contexts in which we've created for ourselves. So if I think about the marketing meetup as an example, previously attending networking events and heading into those spaces, then there's probably a version of being a louder, more confident version, a more outwardly confident person that would serve me, to be more compelling, to sort of command the room, to be able to introduce myself as I walk into those circles. But I think there's a realization that, like, by forcing myself into those situations which just didn't work, by pretending to be something I wasn't, it was never really a fruitful exercise. And so I think confidence for me is this ability to show up as yourself, whatever that might be, and being comfortable with that. And I think there's a shoulders drop moment that we can allow ourselves in that, where we just go, cool. I hope this isn't putting you on the spot here, Sarah, but like before today's session coming in, like you were sort of saying about being nervous or anxious, like that. And those are like incredibly normal experiences, but like you are incredible, and like you simply showing up as you is like totally enough. And like that would be the best expression of confidence. And I've seen you do it like so incredibly well. And so like, you know, in this session, if you simply show up as yourself, then that's a great confident version. And like, my goodness, that is enough. Like, and that's, yeah, it's just a lot. So yeah, confidence, whether it's loud confidence or quiet confidence, the ability to show up as yourself, finding that's tricky, but I think there's a lot of joy once you do.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much. I think you saved me at the last marketing meetup in Cambridge, because I walked in and realised I didn't recognise anyone, and then you were there and introduced me to a few people, and that just put me at ease instantly. So yeah, thank you for that. And I think I'm really working on like being able to speak, you know, publicly and things like that. I did one of the webinars this week actually with Max,
Nice.
which was really, really useful. Yeah, I found it really enjoyable. So I guess in terms of like on a more personal level, when did the concept of like quiet confidence come to you? Is it something that you always kind of knew was a thing in your head, or like where's it kind of come from, I guess?
No, you know, it's one of these things that we carry throughout our lives, right? And so if I think back to my childhood, so I'm from a big family. So my grandma was one of 12 kids. And so like she was one of 12, and then she had 4 kids, and then I'm one of 4 as well. And so I remember going to like Christmas parties and stuff like that as a family gathering, and turning up into these spaces and like walking in. It felt like there's 1,000 people in this one house, and I'm related to every one of them. Yeah. And and you kind of walk in and like, I remember those houses being full of so much joy and so much love, but also like kind of hating it a little bit. And it's not that like I didn't enjoy being around those people. Of course I did, but the smells, the overwhelm of like the situation. You know, I was quite young, so being around people's bums, you know, like the sort of bum height, you know, not great when you're around your family.
So were you the youngest in the group? What age were you? Were you like an older sibling, younger sibling, middle child?
I'm the eldest.
You're the eldest. Yeah. It's interesting because you always think the eldest children have the most confidence, might be the loudest, like they were the first.
Yeah. No,
others do. Interesting.
Molly coddled as a youngster. I don't know, but but I remember having that experience and just like not enjoying those events at all. And it wasn't, as I say, anything about the people there or the thing. It was just a situation which didn't necessarily suit me. And I think growing up, I expected that to change. I expected to walk into, you know, business or big events or whatever it may be, and kind of like have this experience where I'm like, oh, I feel great in this situation. You know, I know what I'm doing because I'm an adult now.
Yeah.
And like, it wasn't that case at all. And I think what's curious about that, or what prompted sort of the realization that quiet confidence was a thing, was that it was only really when I found comfort in showing up as myself did I actually start to feel confident in those situations. When I started to pretend, everything from me just drained. You know, I sort of was weird, you know, like I wouldn't act like myself, and accordingly people would be weird back. You know, there's this weird kind of dance that we all do in business sometimes, which is like pretending to be this person that we're not. And it's so silly. And actually, like when I dropped that, I'm just like, you know what? It's probably enough if I'm stood in the corner, but it's probably enough if I introduce myself to one person and have a really in-depth conversation, rather than feeling like I need to have 20 or 30 conversations with folks around the room.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good point. I feel that completely. I would love to just sit in a corner and get to know how many siblings, children, kids, last holiday, the first job you had, what you did for your GCSEs, like just a 30-year-old person. I'd rather get to know that level of depth than meet 100 people at a networking event. But I'm glad I sat down with you, because I said that as like a target the other day. I was like, every time I go to a networking event, I get to know one person really well. There's like ignoring 50 other people that are there that I should know. I'm wrong, Joe?
No, well, we can only do what we can do, and like if that plays to your strong suit, and you have the best conversation ever, probably one that people will remember as well, right?
Yeah.
Like you just, I mean, in the events context, which of course I come to, if you have one great conversation, you just never know where that leads as well. That one person probably knows another 10 people. That they may be able to introduce you to, and you end up having 10 great conversations rather than 50 bad ones. So like you're just about finding your own route to it. And so
I think so. And I think you a lot of people talk about your why or your purpose, or why you go into a networking event, what's the outcome. And I know one of the big things with the marketing meetup is that you don't go to sell, you go to like find out about people. And I feel like a bit of a devil's advocate in this situation, Joe, because I think you and Sarah would probably really relate to this quiet confidence thing. And I was really nervous to come on this podcast because I was like, I don't know if I'd describe myself as that. I don't think I come across as that. I'm probably the opposite to you guys in that I'm sort of like quiet and like inside voice, whereas you guys would probably come to speak up. So I was like, you guys are so cool. I like, maybe I should try and be more quietly confident. This is what like all the cool people are doing. But then I'm being fake again, and I'm like, that's not me either.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, like I love that you raised that point, and like the focus of today was like quiet confidence, but like that is not to say that one is better than the other. It's just like an exploration and a genuine curiosity around one another, and like I love that for you. Like I love that you can be that person and show up in that way, and it's like it's wicked, and like it's fab. Genuinely.
You're gonna hate hearing this, but I think I felt a little bit intimidated going to the marketing meetup, knowing that I wasn't allowed to sell and I wasn't meant to be loud. I had to listen, and it was a challenge for me. But I went to the first one and I loved it, and it was such a lovely, welcoming environment where you got to hear the voices of people that probably you wouldn't hear. And you have this thing with circles where it's something they call it the Pac-Man. And when you go to events and you walk in and everyone's got their backs to you and you're like, oh, I don't know how to break into this. And if everyone's making that conscious effort to like notice people, invite them into conversations, and it's just easy. You're not talking about people's budgets, what they do, or their level. Everyone has the right to talk to everyone. And you find out the most amazing things about people. And I think I don't have a purpose when I go to the marketing meetup, but I always leave with something new that I've learned, and whether that's things to do in the local area, like that I was like, I've got nothing to do for Easter, and someone goes, that's so cool, or someone's launching something, and I'm like, oh, that's amazing, and you kind of find out things that you didn't go in with a purpose of like, I'm going to sell this, or I'm going to meet that person. It's just relaxed, and it's meeting people and finding out about them over a beer and a pizza usually, and then listening to amazing speakers. Joe, where do you find them? People.
Well, I mean, honestly, on the speaker curation at TMM just so isn't just me anymore. Like it really, really isn't. Like there's over 100, not over 100, nearly 100 people working on TMM now. In various shapes and sizes. So like, I get to do things like this and sort of speak about TMM because I was there at the beginning, but like honestly, like at this point, the vast majority of the activity is done by incredible people, and I'm just sort of trying to get out of the way, frankly, because I just block things. But it's I mean, like just to come back to one of the points you made there, Keri. I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it, about like the non-selling thing, because in my mind that's just good business. I think. And this is a view on the world as well, like which may be disagreed with by other people, and other people will have different things that they prefer. But for me, in my experience, when I was working at a marketing agency, I remember like every client that we brought in, they didn't read our blog post necessarily or check our social media feed. They kind of been built up with relationships which have been like 2-3 years deep. And like by the time that they sort of started working with us on the several £1,000s a month contract, like by that point they almost felt like friends, because we'd built up a relationship which was about dogs or like skiing or like whatever first, and then later in we sort of had a conversation about e-commerce and PPC and SEO and all that sort of stuff. And at that point he goes, well, yeah, of course we'd use you because I've known you forever. And so like there's a place for both, you know. Like a lot of my job these days is trying to sell TMM, you know, so that we can keep doing what we're doing. But there's ways and means to do that, which creates a relationship which is more in depth, more fruitful for everyone, which creates win-wins. I think a lot of the narrative when it comes to like these hard sells at events isn't necessarily wrong. It's just that it's a win-lose, or it's someone winning a bit more than the other.
Yeah.
I think with TMM, when it comes to our sales approach, it's always just been like, how can we create win-wins? And really that comes from a knowledge of the person in front of you, which starts with listening, which starts with a great conversation. And that can be an extroverted conversation full of laughter and whatever, or it can be a quiet conversation which is inquisitive and thoughtful, you know, and they're both great.
And Sarah, you'll probably agree with this, but I think that's exactly how we work at the One Group as well. When we're meeting candidates to job opportunities, it's about conversations and curiosity and getting to people.
Trust. A lot about building trust, I think.
I think it's a really important point. Like, I freaking love recruiters and like the recruitment biz.
The only one in the world.
No, seriously, I mean, there are the terrible ones out there, right? You know, who are the sharky sharks who do whatever. But like, what a gift it is to be able to find someone a job.
The best.
You know, like, I don't know about you, but so much of my identity is wrapped up into my work. I love working. I love business. You know, I really love these things. And to put 8 hours a day of my energy, of my life, into something every day, then that really matters to me. And so the fact that you're able to sit in the middle of a company and an individual and match them in such a way where they get a career which is fulfilling and benefits everyone involved. Like, I mean, there is few things that are more impactful on people's lives and careers than the jobs that they have. So yeah, like, it's a gift. It's a real gift. So like, you know, doing it properly, i.e. understanding the person in front of you, it's huge. It's really huge.
So I'm just getting to that time in my career where I'm seeing marketing assistants like progress and become head of marketing. And that's just so lovely to see. And I think that's why I love the job so much. Could you share a moment in your career where quiet confidence played a key role?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I don't think there's any one moment where I've kind of like shown up and gone, oh goodness, you know, thank God I'm quietly confident. You know, like I think it's not so much about that. I mean, so I have a great privilege in the sense that I'm the founder of a company, and so by the very nature of which the value set of the company that I run is quite reflective of my personality and my disposition, you know, as a person. And so in a sense, I think TMM has hopefully become a thoughtful, kind, authentic place to be where folks do come and feel those things. And in a sense, TMM is a reflection of that quiet confidence, an awareness that we can be useful and we can be competent and that we can do all of those things while at the same time listening and valuing the people in front of us. I think it is a continuous theme that comes through everything that we do. The reason being that, like, you know, everything from how folks are greeted when they walk into the space and an acknowledgement that they could be anxious, right the way through to our cookie policy on our website, which sort of is a slightly tongue-in-cheek acknowledgement that we're all marketers and we know what cookies are, etc. I think the one thing that TMM, or one of the things that TMM has done quite well is this idea of congruence, which is just consistently doing the same thing in the same way, showing up, helping people. And so I can't necessarily point to one way where it's helped. I can point to one way where I feel like it hasn't helped. And so I remember being sat around a senior team meeting at a previous company. There was probably 15 of us or something like that around the table, maybe a few less. And it's just that sense while a group conversation is going on, you know, of wanting to say something or wanting to butt in. And it's not an irregular thing in my life to start a sentence which nobody hears I've started, or to make a comment that nobody hears and carries on. I mean, I don't think I'm that not funny. I don't think I'm funny, but I don't think I'm that not funny that people would like not acknowledge them at all. You know, and so like these things are just features of my personality and how I show up. They are features of having a quiet voice and therefore in a group situation not always being heard. I think part of the confidence equation is sort of either pushing through nonetheless and trying to be heard a little bit more, having an awareness that this is a potential bad side of what I perceive to be an overall good thing, or, you know, just kind of dealing with it and going, cool, you know, that's missed on that one. But it is the type of thing that also gets picked up on. So like, remember in like previous performance reviews and something like that, people would sort of say, you say two things in the meeting, but they're always valued, you know, and they change your conversation. And so like, it's the type of stuff where, again, it's sort of, even though it could be a bad way, a bad context, you know, like I can't be heard in meetings. There is the flip side, which is like the two things I say will have value. So yeah, you know, quiet confidence comes with quietness. And so, you know, sort of being an awareness that that's the thing is both good and bad.
When you've been in roles before, Joe, and you've had managers that have identified the good bits, because I think sometimes it's on them to hear you, give you space to speak if they can. Have you ever had any leaders in businesses that you've worked for that they've been quietly confident, or have you always reported into big extroverts?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never really thought about it. It's a good question though. So my first boss was very introverted, and actually thinking about it, I didn't understand that when I sort of first met him, because he had a very gregarious part of his personality. But I think what I came to realize was that was him being on, you know, that was him sort of showing up, that was him pushing through, you know, and so he could show up for folks in a certain kind of way for a short amount of time. But then the rest of the time he needed to recharge. Right. And so I think folks can see these sort of more extroverted, large moments and assume that's everyone's entire personality, when in fact, you know, in his case, he needed to recharge in a very introverted, in a very quiet fashion. And so like recognizing, even as part of this discussion around quiet confidence, that while I will most typically show up in a quietly confident way, there may be moments where I can be get more gregarious and so on and so forth, which is just to say we're all nuanced people, right? You know, we've all got our moments and we've all got our different ways. Funnily enough, the second guy I ended up working for was complete opposite end of the spectrum, just like the most extroverted showman that you've ever seen in your entire life. But we, you know, to use the millennial term, we just vibed really well, because like it's sort of like I was the quietness to his loudness, you know, I was
yin and yang.
You know, something, yeah, exactly. And so he was, you know, it can just work in different ways. And I think I have perhaps regrets around the first relationship, in the fact that I didn't recognize and get the most from that relationship, because I hadn't recognized that quietness. But then with the second, to sort of recognize that there's so many benefits in different characters and a diversity of life experiences and a diversity in how folks show up that can bring such different things to the fore.
Yeah, I think I've heard of people partnering with the opposite to them so that they can be who they need to be because they've got that other person. So that's great in a structure if you can have the yin to your yang and you can get your head down and be quietly confident while somebody else is pitching or being loudly confident. Even at parties, if someone else is doing all the talking, you can just kind of eat cheese and have a little.
I do love cheese.
Yeah, benefits, right? For partnering up in that world. But I liked what you were saying about the different bosses that you've had and how quiet confidence can show up in leadership. Have you spotted it anywhere else where you've really respected a quiet confidence in a leader that you've worked with or just seen in the wider world?
I think I'd probably just, for my mind, when you're asking the question there, the thing that came to mind was not so much admiring quiet confidence in someone as much as just confidence in whatever shape it comes. And so if we loop back round to that thing at the beginning there, where it's like confidence is simply someone showing up as themselves, I think about pretty much every good relationship I've had and almost every bad relationship I've had in business. All of the good stuff is generally folks having that sort of sense of comfort about themselves, and they could be comfortable in their obnoxiousness or comfortable in their directness, but they're very comfortable because it's an authentic display of them as a person. Versus every bad relationship I feel like I've experienced in business has been someone who's trying to be something that they're not, or trying to sort of put on this show. And you come away from those discussions and you're like, why are you doing that? Who's benefiting here? Because in this instance, in those instances where they're not showing up as themselves, it must just be such hard work for them to show up and sort of feel like they need to do those things. Now, as I say those things, I think it's important to acknowledge the bunch of privilege that goes alongside those things, right? To show up as yourself takes an incredible amount of work. And so like some people are insecure, don't have that confidence, are working on that confidence, have different life situations, which mean that they don't feel like they can show up for them. And that can be demographic, socio, all kind of reasons.
Yeah.
Think about really, just sort of starting from that place of like some really, really great relationships have not come from people who have been outwardly confident in the sense that they are loud or extroverted. It is just people who can kind of relax their shoulders as they walk into a space and go, I'm here and I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to do my best for you, and I'm going to do my best for the company that I work for. And in either of those situations, then I hope that we both win. And those are the great relationships. Those are the things where I've admired and had great conversations with people for the most part.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I think you're right. Some people might need to put a face on or be somebody that they feel that they're not because of how they're going to be perceived.
Absolutely.
There might be people pleasers, they want to be liked, or they're in a role where they need to win. Maybe I think it's probably quite associated with sales quite often, that if you're selling something, that there's a perception of what that needs to look like, and you need to be something that's acceptable. And maybe there's a lack of confidence there, and showing up as yourself might not be accepted. I think that's changed as well. And I know you said you're working in sales yourself, and there is an element of building relationships and that deeper level of adding value that, to a degree, doesn't really matter what you look like, what you sound like, if what you can do is going to add value.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's for me to backtrack a little bit, because I think, there's, while it's easy for me to be coming from this position, having done a lot of work on the journey and still not there, I think it's a journey for everyone to go on, and we all start in different places for different reasons. And so it's not necessarily fair for me to criticize anyone for not showing up as themselves. I think it's tough, and there are expectations put upon us in our environments, either in terms of results or the demands of our jobs and our context and the people who surround us, that may or may not influence the reasons why people show up in certain ways. In the context of today's conversation, sort of, I guess I come to this from a place of finding comfort in myself and being able to show up in a way which was probably slightly unconventional to start off with. But yeah, I certainly don't want to point fingers at anyone else and go, you're a terrible person if you don't feel like you can show up as yourself, because like I think we would love to, a lot of us would love to, but there's a bunch of reasons why people may not as well.
Do you think that's something that's helped you get to the point that you're at, which sounds amazing? Is that something, I know you said you did a lot of work, is there anything in particular that could help other people find that quiet confidence?
I think first of all, there's probably like an acceptance that confidence comes in lots of different ways for lots of different reasons. And so the example that I tend to give is that I grew up playing football, and so like I love football. I got comfortable on a football pitch. Like I knew what I was doing, so when I turned up on that field, I knew exactly what I was doing, and I felt confident. I felt good. I felt, comfortable. Now, if at the same stage you asked me to play rugby, I wouldn't feel comfortable. I wouldn't feel confident. I wouldn't know what I was doing. And really what this illustrates is that confidence can be context dependent. So you put me in a situation where I'm doing karaoke, I'm not going to be confident. You put me in a situation where I can have a great conversation with someone, I feel like I might be. Okay. And so the first thing is to say, shoulders relaxed, I'm not going to be confident all the time. And that's okay, and a bit of forgiveness. The second thing to acknowledge is that I think we will often hold on to versions of ourselves from 2-3 years ago. So 2 or 3 years ago would have been what, 20, 22, 23. And like, I was less far on my journey than I am today, in lots of different ways. My daughter's 4 years old now, so I've been a parent for 3 years longer now. And I'm a different version to what I was 3 years ago. Now, if I held on to that version of what I was 3 years ago, then I would be, my mental model of myself would be quite a different mental model of what I actually am today. And so I think there's secondly a bit of forgiveness that we can give ourselves, that like we will change and we will grow. And we can look at ourselves today and say, I am not 2022 Joe anymore. I am 2025 Joe, and that looks like this. It's slightly more bald. It's probably a little bit more chubby, but like it's a different version of whatever it may be, and that's cool. So like taking comfort that if someone says to you, you've changed, you go, hell yeah, I have. We're all changing and we're all growing, and like that's cool.
Yeah.
The final thing, which I think really helps me, is a quote that was lent to me by a guy called David McQueen, who is himself incredible. And it's a few simple words, but those simple words are, you deserve to be here. And like when you allow yourself to sit with those words in those situations, particularly where you feel uncomfortable, and go, I deserve to be here, then like there's hopefully a little bit of something that enables you to kind of go, cool, I'm okay here, I'm safe, I can be me, and whatever the situation is that I feel uncomfortable right now, then I've probably done something to earn it one way or another. And hopefully that's in a really good situation as well. Like I'm not pointing fingers at the bad situations, but in the good ones, where you're looking around the room and you go, God, everyone around me is amazing. And actually, if you go, well, I'm in this room too, and they're probably looking around the room and thinking the same thing, and I deserve to be here. And I think that that offers a lot to life in general. So yeah, David McQueen is well worth looking up as well.
Amazing. And I think the marketing meetup, that's definitely the case. People can go as a marketing graduate to a head of marketing, people who are freelancing, and be able to talk to anyone. And they're often reminded that you have the right to kind of just go and speak to anyone about anything. Like you don't need to be a certain level. But do you think there are any misconceptions about quiet confidence in the business world at all?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. definitely. I think we tend to place higher value on loudness and being heard for a lot of the systems that we've chosen to build in our business culture. Being heard, getting in front of people, the language that we use to describe these things is by implication sort of quite noisy. And so the opposite exists. If you are quiet, if you are unseen, if you are those things, then the initial response is, yeah, that's probably less than. Certainly I felt less than at certain points in my life for having a quiet voice or whatever it may be. But I think that's changing slowly, and I think there's a lot to be said for that sort of embracing of who you are and finding comfort in it. And I tend to find that folks will show up a little bit better as themselves than anything else.
Do you think it could contribute to a stronger relationship and trust in business?
Of course. Yeah, because I don't know, any deep relationship I have in my life, there is trust and there is vulnerability and there is thoughtfulness and there is concern for the other person in front of you. And none of those things are necessarily a refuge of quiet folks alone. But I do think there are those traits which are associated with people who can show up in those ways, to listen, to sort of ask great questions, to be concerned about the first person in front of them. And so yeah, like absolutely that vulnerability, that thoughtfulness, those questions, absolutely contribute to stronger relationships.
Do you think it affects how people apply to jobs and how they show up at interviews?
Yeah, I should ask you guys, really. My perception is that it probably does. It probably would concern people that when they walk into an interview situation, that they would concern themselves that they're not going to be the brash person who sort of comes in and commands the room, I imagine. But let me turn it on to you two. How do you feel about the candidates who are quieter? Do you see that they get less leverage in an interview situation than those who would show up in a louder fashion?
I think it really depends on the process. I always encourage a casual chat first, and I think that can really help. You can kind of tell, some people get nervous, some people don't get as nervous. I guess it is that difference between the quiet confidence and the louder confidence. And I think where I am a bit more quietly confident, I do really empathize with the people that just get nervous. They're great at what they do, but will waffle in an interview situation, or it comes across as nervous. And I think interviews have changed over time. Companies have all different interview processes, but I do always encourage that informal chat on more of a get to know each other level before going in and being, competency-based questions where you're really put on the spot. And I think that just from my opinion, I don't think it gauges how good someone is at the role to start with, because they want to be eased in first and made to feel comfortable, I think. I don't know, how do you interview at the marketing meetup? I imagine you've probably put some adaptations in to kind of, help people that are quietly confident.
Yeah, I mean, it's so we hired recently, and so we hired for a community manager, or a community human, was the job title. And so it was the first thing we did with our application form was that it was a type form application form, and it was a lot more based around folks' character than it was necessarily about their competence. The reason being that we're a small team, and we need to get on with the folks that we want to work with. And so the type form, I can't remember the exact questions that we asked now, but I think it was questions to the effect of, can you give us 3 words which describe your character and what is your favorite thing in the world? Can you tell us about it? Type of thing. And they're not designed to be obnoxious. I think that's the other side of that thing, where sometimes folks can be asking you stuff which is so silly and so unrelated to the job that you're doing that you go, God, this is just silly. But with us, it was about finding out the people that we wanted to work with, and we got such rich responses back from folks, paragraphs on paragraphs. We had over 1,000 applications for this particular job, and with that, like they weren't LinkedIn easy apply sort of applications. These were like fully thought through 1,000 of these sort of paragraph based answers. With those, we went through one by one, so it was a manual process. And so for us, it was like, if we're getting these rich answers sent to us, then we're going to go through and richly look at them. The things that we did, the first things that we did was we anonymized every application, so there wasn't sort of any internal bias as much as possible. And then the second thing we did was just build out a scoring system based on the competencies that we asked folks for in the application form. It took about a week to go through the applications between 5 of us, which is wild. But by the end, we'd sort of surfaced, I think it was a short list of about 20 folks based on this scoring system that we took through to interview. For us, it was a virtual thing, so folks could turn up in their tracksuit bottoms as much as they could in their in any other way. We don't wear suits to work, so they could show up in a space that they felt comfortable with. And we did a 2-stage interview process. So the first was with the team, and then the second was with myself and my co-founder. And again, it was really about the character of the folks first and foremost. We've made the mistake of hiring on vibes only in the past, and character is vital, but so is competence. So of course you need to do both. But the person we ended up with, Sarah, who is been with us for the past 2 months, is just phenomenal, and she is both full of character but full of competence. And I'd like to think, more than anything, when you ask the question about our hiring process, when it comes to that, I think it just comes to respect. I think it's like, if folks are going to take the time to apply and put together a thoughtful application, then the respect is shown on the other side, which is like, we're going to read your thing, we're going to understand it, we're going to try our best to understand you because you matter. And we ended up with a great result at the end, which was fab.
Yeah, I think it's that
valued as well.
Say again, sorry,
I was going to say, but Sarah feels really valued, having gone through that thorough process to join you.
I hope so. It was one of those where even the folks that we were saying no to, I had so many lovely emails back from folks sort of saying, this was the most fulfilling application process, and I actually learned something about myself as a result, which is a real win for sure.
I was just going to say, I think it's that level of understanding that the role needs to be right for the candidate as much as they need to be right for the role. And I think treating each other as people rather than this is a candidate that needs to desperately try and show me how they can do this job. It's that respect, isn't it? And I think they're the processes that are most successful.
For sure. I never want to put this on any of our team that they have to stay with us forever, but it would be nice if they did, because they're good folks, and we will always look to develop them. And if they progress out of the company, then that will be a great outcome as well. But by the time that we end up working with someone, then it's let's hope to keep you, and that works on the basis of bringing them in, making them feel valued, and caring about those folks. There is one thing which you can never spend too much time on, and that's hiring, because these folks, all the company is a collection of people doing things in the same direction, right? So you got to find the good people to do those things.
Yeah, and I think it's allowing people to be themselves as well, and understanding that people are different, and like the quiet confidence side of it, and then the louder confidence, I guess. They can both do a great job, just in different ways, and I think we are moving more towards that, aren't we? Which is great. That takes us on to the next question. I was just wondering, like, what your thoughts are on like social media and how that affects confidence, or quiet confidence, or confidence.
Yeah. Well, let me move past the obvious answer, which is, the sort of social media is bad bit, because like I think that's probably something that all of us are aware of the toxicity of social media platforms and the potential for that. I agree with those things and hold them too. The other side of it is probably the bit which I would focus on, which is that I am rubbish, or not rubbish, but I am less competent at expressing myself through spoken word than I am via written word. And so I enjoy writing. I enjoy being sat down and sort of being able to express myself and create a fully formed thought, and then put it out on something like LinkedIn and sort of have folks react to that thought. And quite often my experience in like a conversation situation is sometimes folks won't let you finish that thought, or will be thinking of the next thing to say to you without necessarily digesting the thing that you said. And so for me, social media has been a wonderful outlet for just writing and sharing and conveying thoughts and processing my own thoughts and developing them and changing them, and having conversations around them. And all of these things I don't think would necessarily have been possible without a public forum in which to share thoughts, express, discuss. And so I am fully on board with the toxic nature of social media and the potential for that. And like, we're living in like peak adolescence sort of period of time at the moment, where folks are really pointing to the dangers of social media, and so they should. But there's a real positive thing for folks like myself who are able to sort of express themselves and find people who agree or disagree and sort of hash those thoughts out in a written fashion. So yeah, I'm a fan, and like it's been good for me in lots of ways. It's probably been bad for me in lots of ways too, but to be able to express and write has been great.
Yeah, and create a community, which is, I think, a lot about what you're all about, Joe. That's how I feel about you anyway. The marketing meetup, the way that you post on LinkedIn and encourage thoughts and comments, and it's all community, isn't it? It's all about bringing people together and bringing people up.
Yeah, it's not wildly complicated. I think the stuff that we do at TMM is like just good people getting together, looking to value each other over pizza and beer. And it's like, as a concept, it's not that crazy. The thing that I really, really care about is culture, about people, how they show up. And in those instances, like being able to sort of set that tone through written word is a real privilege.
I know you said that you find it easier to write. Was that always the case, or was there, when you were writing out a post, do you ever hesitate on putting it out? Or I imagine there's probably people, hopefully, that will be listening that perhaps have that kind of self-doubt before posting. I mean, I know I do it. I get it read by a couple of people before I'm like, is this going to be okay? Like, yeah.
Honestly, as a secret shared between friends, then I delete posts all the time.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, like I mainly when I don't feel like I've two reasons why I delete posts. The first is if I'm being a bit moody, and like I've put something out into the world which is a bit negative, then like I don't like that, like, because the thing you get back in the comments is people agreeing with your negativity or adding their own negativity, and that doesn't serve my day, it doesn't serve their day. And in the grand scale of it, we're doing marketing, which is important in lots and lots of ways, but it's also not that important in lots of other ways. And so like I don't share things if or I will delete posts if I feel like I've been a bit negative, because like it doesn't benefit anyone. The other thing delete posts for is if I just don't feel like I conveyed myself that well. Like there's been quite a few times over the course of time where I've written something down and in my head it's like I am making this point, and then you see the first few comments come through and someone else has taken it a different way. And you're like, I haven't done a good enough job of conveying this opinion or this thought in a way which is truly representative of what I think or feel. And like in that case, it's like it's pretty sucky, because you're like, I probably do think this thing, but I haven't conveyed it in such a way which makes it accessible for people to read. So those will be the two occasions. But like the crux of your question there about like sort of having that nervousness about posting and stuff like that, like it's horrible, isn't it? You know, it's like it's a proper thing. Of course it is. I guess the only comforting thought really in those instances is like that 99% of people won't care, which is like kind of horrible in a way, because you're like, I'm putting effort into this. But like in another, it's like something that is big to us in our world, and we can only go through the world looking through the eyes that we have. But like something big in our world is probably small in someone else's, and so they're probably not going to be worrying about that typo in the same way as you are, or whatever it may be.
Makes our skin crawl when we see our own typos, and someone else would probably just not even notice it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad that you said that. I'm quite glad you said you delete posts, because I think I wrote to like, no, Jim Glover doesn't delete posts. I can't but no, and it's also true that to have that confidence to put something out into the world, how you're feeling in that moment, it feels like you get over that hurdle and you get it out there, knowing that there is a delete button, that you can take it back, you can edit things, you can edit, readjust. But seeing how people respond to that it's a learning curve, isn't it? And there is that, if you don't put it out there, it'll have never happened. It'll have happened in your world, but you in community and showing up, posting, putting things out there, that's how I think maybe how you've potentially got to where you are, in that self-confidence of testing, learning, kind of sitting in elements of being uncomfortable to know who you are then on the other side of it, maybe.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's I personally have a viewpoint for the most part, because I don't actually post about marketing all that much, which is funny, despite being the thing that we're all in. A lot of it are more personal reflections on growing business, on mental health, on parenting, etc., etc. And I kind of have a viewpoint that like I'm doing all right, I'm doing all right for the most part. And so if it comes to a conversation around mental health where someone is sat in a company where they don't feel safe to have a conversation around mental health or anxiety or depression or whatever, then I can speak about my own journey of that and kind of take the hits and kind of go, like if that is one step closer to normalizing some of the conversation around these things, being another voice in the time where someone else doesn't feel comfortable in using their own, then like I feel like that's a privilege of acknowledging my situation, in the sense that like it's very easy to be twee about these things and go, oh no, TMM isn't a success or whatever it is, but like it has, it's been great. It's been great as an experience, and like it's grown and like it is this thing, and people look to me occasionally and sort of say really nice things, which is lovely. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, let's acknowledge that, the face value for them being lovely. But like, if that's the case, then like, there's a privilege in sort of being able to sort of have these discussions and sort of do these things and use my voice in that way. And I should, and I will, because, those are the conversations which feel more important. So like just being able to show up in that way is a fortunate place to be in, I guess.
I think a lot of people do try and fake being an extrovert. Like, I know I've done it throughout a lot of my life actually. It's probably been the last 5 years that I've been more like, I want to be myself now, and like understanding that, you know, I'm not the person that's the loudest and all of that side of it. But I think there's probably people that are still trying to do the, you know, be an extrovert and really like draining their social battery. And I was wondering what advice you would give to kind of, I guess, overcome that need to fake it.
It's such a good question, and like, isn't it the joy of life that you're able to kind of reflect on things even as conversations go on? So like, I've probably, in the duration of this conversation, I've probably been thinking, well, I have been thinking pretty hard about like how I frame the joy and the comfort that I've found in quiet confidence, because I think it is one laced with so much privilege in a sense, which is like, you know, like the situation I'm in, where I was born, sort of the lack of whatever, you know, that really to sort of, for me to kind of sit here and sort of say, you should be doing something different, doesn't feel like the right thing for me to be doing. The thing that I can really speak to is the stuff that helped me, and that if people would like to find themselves feeling more comfortable in their quietness, then like probably just sort of saying, you know, like, isn't that a joyful thing to sort of be okay with not being that extroverted character? Like, is that a thing that you would enjoy? Then, you know, like, I've sort of found that place and it's a lovely thing. So like, that's probably the first reflection. It's just like, it's not for me to say, here's what you need to do to be quietly confident, because like my situation is wildly different. I think the first thing is to say, it is possible if you want it, for most people in different ways. And so really, I think I probably hark back to those 3 lessons from before, really, which is acknowledging that you will grow and change, being comfortable with the sense of like, I deserve to be here, and kind of just sitting with who you are and going, you kind of get one shot at this stuff, and if you would like to change some element of how you show up in whatever fashion that may be, then you've got that choice in your life, hopefully. And yeah, so probably a lot of the stuff I said earlier, but yeah, you deserve to be here is probably the one that sort of sits with me and was a bit of a game changer in that regard.
And it's just so powerful as well. When you said that earlier, I could just feel, I don't know, it just like, it gives you an emotional reaction, doesn't it? Hearing that, I think it was just like maybe a relief. I don't know, but it was, yeah, just such a powerful sentence, I think. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That'll be one that stays with me.
Not at all.
I think that probably brings us to the end for today. It's been, yeah, really lovely chatting with you, Joe, and I hope that our listeners find it helpful as well to, you know, do what they want to do, you know that it's possible if they are sitting there struggling with confidence, to be able to be themselves and show up in any way, you know, that's genuine for them. So yeah, hopefully it's been helpful for everyone.
Thank you for having me. It's really appreciated. Appreciate both of you lots and lots.